And welcome to the Dark Knight Show. Guys, what we are going to do now, we are going to learn the endgame technique used by a women international chess master against me in a blitz game. Ready? Let's jump in. We'll get to the critical position very quickly. We'll skip the opening, but of course, we'll briefly see how it went. So e4, e6. e4, as you know, following the opening principle, opens the bishop, opens the queen, and grabs space in the center, right? Alright, I played e6 with the idea to go d5 to grab more space. And of course offering pawn trade. Okay, let's fast forward from here. d4, d5, she protected the pawn with the knight, okay. I played c5, attacking the center once again. She traded, I took back with the queen. She developed the knight, I took the pawn. It looks like she's losing the pawn. It's not the case. Temporarily, yes. In long run, no. She will get the pawn back. Because I need to develop and castle quickly. If I would try to maintain the pawn, then there are tactics later in the game where she would castle quickly, the rook would appear on the e line and create problems. So there was no point in protecting the pawn after trading. So why did I trade? Because I got the opportunity to trade a flank pawn for a central pawn. But hey, am I going to protect it? Would I try to maintain it? Of course not. That's a mistake. Let your opponent take back the pawn, no problem. After you have traded, just castle quickly and put the rook in the center. Make sure to take notes, make sure to keep this idea in mind and apply it if you're playing the French defense. So trade happened. She played bishop to c4, hitting my queen, winning a tempo. Use your opponent's queen to gain tempo. Another rule, make sure to write it down. Queen goes back, castle, knight out, developing the knight, also stopping this knight e4 annoying move, hitting the queen. She got the knight out, attacking this. There is no point in playing e5 once again because of problems on the e line. Better let your opponent take the pawn and castle. Knight out, trade happened. She took back with the queen. I traded. She took back. Now her idea was to go here and here, so I just put the bishop on d7. If she would go knight to b5, I would go rook to c8. If she would take the pawn, I would take the bishop. So there was no point for her in going for knight to b5 to c7 trick. Rook to e1, she just improved the rook. I got the rook out, winning a tempo. The bishop goes back. I tried to win another with tempo. She put the knight on f5, trying to use the pin. I simply castled, also protected the pawn. Her knight was threatened now because the pawn was not pinned anymore. So the knight goes back. I put the rook on the d8 square. Knight to e4. You can see how good my position was. I had a pretty good position. She put the rook on d1. In this position, I should have traded and improved the bishop and played with the two bishops. I decided to put my bishop on b5 just to improve my bishop and open the rook. That was the idea. And also I was threatening to win the bishop. As you can see, we had two attackers, she had one defender, so she moved the bishop. I put my bishop on e2. The rooks got traded, the bishops got traded, won a tempo, and I got into this position where she had not an amazing bishop, but I had an amazing knight. An endgame position with advantage. Opponent got outplayed in the opening, but as you are going to see, she outplayed me in the endgame. So let's see. f6, e5, grabbing more space. King out, the rooks got traded. King out. In the endgame, make sure to activate your king towards the center if possible, but it will depend on the position, generally towards the center. King goes to d5, very good. I centralized my king. She was planning to attack my pawns on the dark squares, so I was putting my pawns on the light squares. f5, put the pawn on the light square. Check, knight goes back, hitting the pawn, the knight comes back, and I had a pretty playable position. Most probably it would end in a draw, but I wanted to win this position, and that's why I got in trouble. Played e5, e4, e5 to e4, hitting the king. The knight goes back, and then the knight goes to c5. I didn't want to trade my knight, but she forced me to trade the knight because she put her bishop on that square, and if I would move my knight, I would lose the pawn. So I moved the pawn and she traded, and this was all playable position. for black. Even Steven, number of pawns even, but now we are in a critical position. So she just played c4. Of course, trading would create a passed pawn. She also has a passed pawn right now. It's a protected passed pawn, but my king can continue to blockade it. And we are watching the video just to learn this endgame that we have in front. So pay attention and take notes if you want to. So here I played g5. I didn't trade because then her king would get activity. She would enter. She would use this pawn as a decoy. I can quickly show how it could go wrong for me after the trade. And if I would move my king somewhere, say here, then she would use this pawn as a decoy. And of course she could also promote the pawn. But say I would try to create a passed pawn on this part of the board, she would just abandon this queenside pawn to munch my kingside pawns. So that's why now this pawn would promote. So that's why I didn't trade, because that would create a winning endgame for her. Very rightfully I didn't do that. I played g5, hit 6, and it was a draw. And still, for some weird reason, I wanted her to continue to play. I could have offered draw, and most probably she would accept it. You never know. But the thing is, I wanted her to go wrong for some weird reason. And my mistake was, after pawn to h4, I should have played this move g4. Why g4? It would lock down the position completely. Now her king would never enter and pick up this pawn. She won't create a passed pawn on this part of the board, and this pawn will always be blockaded by my king. And she would never enter in my territory. In simple words, she just cannot enter my territory, and this pawn will always be controlled by my king, and it would be a draw. But I just continue to make moves out of momentum. Once again, I had this golden opportunity to play g4 and lock down the position. But then she uncorked that move g4 in this position, and that blew me off the board. Why this move g4 is such a strong move? It looks like it loses a pawn, right? Hey, it's not that simple. If I trade, then her king would enter, gobble all my pawns, and she would have passed pawns to win the game. So no point in taking. I push the pawn. But the thing is, after the trade, I do get 2 passed pawns, but she also gets now another passed pawn. And the problem is, her king alone is enough to stop these 2 pawns, because if pawn goes forward, king goes forward, and the pawn is not going to promote. You can see. So her king is in a position to control my 2 pawns, but my king is not in a position to control her 2 pawns, because she would send 1 pawn, my king would run to stop it, the other pawn would promote, and that's exactly what happened in the game. And I tried to abandon the pawns and tried to promote, but it was not enough, and she went on to win the game and checkmated. So learning is the end game. In this position, opponent has a passed pawn. If your king can handle that passed pawn, sure, remain in that position. Don't let your opponent create another passed pawn, especially a distant passed pawn, where your king will be torn, trying to stop both of the passed pawns. Make sure to keep this idea in mind. In the end game, if you have a passed pawn, try to create a distant passed pawn if you can in that position in king plus pawn endgame, and use that distant passed pawn as a decoy like my opponent did in the game, and then win the game. Make sure to apply this endgame technique. Make sure to send me your games via email. Make sure to check out my website www.darkknightchess.com. There you will see all of the best lessons. You can book your lessons and start learning and improving journey. You will learn all of the best ideas that I have learned from trying to get from 700 to 2500 plus on chess.com. All packages are available right now. Make sure to book your slot before all the slots get filled, and make sure to comment down below on what topic you want me to make the video on, and I'll create the video on that topic. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned, more videos are coming. Chill, enjoy, play games, and you have a wonderful day ahead. Bye bye for now.